Sergei Aldoshin, member of the Russian Academy of Science, vice president of the Russian Academy of Science, director of the Institute of Problems of Chemical Physics, RAS. Well, that which Viktor Ivanovich has shown us today, those experiments in which we also took part, they are certainly very impressive. But the most important is that he discovered these phenomena, the phenomena which can work, which really can create energy. And behind all these phenomena, a good fundamental science is standing. And I think that both the practical side and fundamental side here go hand in hand. Anatoly Fesenko, director of the Institute of Criminalistics of the FSB, Russian Federation, Doctor of Science in Physics and Mathematics, Major General. The technologies Viktor Ivanovich invented, which I kept a close watch over, participated in many of works, they are put to use and now are in the inventory of intelligence agencies. For example, the one solving the clear water issue. Or another example, a small brick burning for 24 hours. So one can warm up and feed dinner to the whole company of soldiers. Where? In the desert? In the mountains. For me, it is great luck in my life that I met him. He is a talented inventor. I would say Edison. Here, I compare him to Edison. And in addition to this, he is the person who, for all his life, is dreaming to do good to people. Chen Tse-Yutu, president of CEFC, China. The development of society depends as well on such people as Mr. Petrik, whose inventions we have seen today. And on his inventions, many things depend, which are related to many areas of life. What we have seen today impressed me. I am very satisfied. Lu Vemloon, chief technical expert of CEFC. The whole world today is captured by two companies, French and American. Based on what I have seen today and participated in experiments myself, I think that you will be ahead of them and will become number one. The future is in your hands. Igor Yeremenko, member of the Russian Academy of Science, laboratory chief of the Kornikov Institute of General and Inorganic Chemistry. Well, we've got great satisfaction today while talking to Viktor Ivanovich Petrik. Have seen many interesting things, and some of them were obscure. Some we imagined somehow, from a nanotechnology's point of view, for which I am responsible, according to the state program of the Russian Federation. The perspectives here are huge, in my opinion. But as a chemist who studies molecule-based nanotechnologies, I like very much an admirably implemented idea, the separation of platinum metals. And that purity with which these metals are acquired, almost quantitative, it's just shocking. And of course, carbon materials. When we speak of graphene, the effects are simply shaking. The perspectives here are enormous. Graphene of such a type has not been yet acquired by anyone in the world. And before our eyes, these plates of various density were produced, and the battery created, which has yet to achieve the limitations of time when it comes to its service end. In my opinion, it is almost everlasting. And here we should simply create a monument for Viktor Ivanovich. Dr. Vijay P. Bhatkar, an Indian scientist, creator of Param computer model family. I represent the direction of scientific and technical research in India, and I am acquainted with the best achievements in all over the world. And I met many extraordinary scientists of different countries. this meeting with Petrik. It is a great honor for me, and I have seen that in many ways he has groundbreaking inventions and discoveries. For 3 days, we listened to reports which were made by Dr. Petrik, visited his laboratories and production facilities, and came to a unanimous decision that Dr. Petrik is the innovator, outstanding for all times. And he not only makes suggestions and inventions, but he brings them to practical application. We are unanimously delighted by the achievements of Dr. Petrik. Li Piaget, professor of Beijing University. What we have seen today can have a great impact on the further existence of society, can be applied in industry, in ordinary life of people. And there are many results which had been acquired today in the process of experiments later on in China as well. They can have very, very high demand. In my opinion, Mr. Petrik maybe would have more impact on the world than Leonardo da Vinci. Vladimir Smetanyakov, Chief Structural Engineer of the FSUE Dolezhal R&D Institute of Power Engineering, Doctor of Science in Engineering. The impression I have is, of course, great and unforgettable. Our meetings occur very often, where we discuss various questions. What had been shocking to me, we touched questions of biology as well, and physics and chemistry. There had been almost no fields which we would not touch, and energy development, of course. The polyhistory of his knowledge is impressive, and this polyhistory is not shallow. It is included in the contextual depth of circumstances. That's where it's at. And it is no wonder that he has so many inventions. This is the person who is able, out of seemingly invisible matters, to choose the main one and to define the key factor, the source of the phenomenon. I think it is his greatest property. This is the gift of God. Very few people have such a gift. And of course, it is very interesting to spend time with him, as I sometimes, maybe even controversially, ask such questions, not directly related to the matter. I receive such deep, great answers that I simply wondered the depth of knowledge of this person. I didn't see any gaps in his knowledge. I have never in my life met such a type of phenomena. And this is, of course, shocking. Dr. Sh. Pavar, academician, pro-rector of Patila University in Kolhapur. Our group of scientists from India had made the acquaintance with Dr. Petrik's achievements. And what we've seen here would be applied not only in India, but also in the scope of the whole world society. Very clear experiments were performed. We tested the materials and are very satisfied with the results. This is really the breakthrough in the technology of the 20th century. I am glad that I came to Russia, to St. Petersburg, and the motivation is, of course, simple: to see with my own eyes these achievements, check on the spot, and provide for the establishment of public-private partnership for the introduction of these innovations. Dr. Shivram Baburao Boje, Indian nuclear physicist. We visited the laboratories of Dr. Petrik and are under very great impression from those works which he has made during the last years. He pursued many fields in a revolutionary way. He united science, engineering, and the usage of products. Dr. Petrik is the person who has many facets of activities, and he has many practical ideas. During the last several days, we have got a great impression from this visit. Kaku Nakanishi, the head of the Japanese scientist delegation. Professor Petrik, he is not only an extraordinary scientist, but he knows culture, including Japanese culture. haiku, and games very much. And he understands music very much. And he has vast interest in the scientific field. One cannot say one or the other specialty. He has a very broad range of knowledge. It is hard for us to imagine how one person can have so many interests and so much knowledge. Vladimir Novotortsev, member of the Russian Academy of Science, director of the Kornikov Institute of General and Inorganic Chemistry. The man works not only with passion, not only is he a person who is able and sees applied problems, but he has intuition, at least, and not only intuition, but he is very well read, knows literature very well. And when he says that he is only an inventor, he is being slightly dishonest. It is the real scientist, a person who, it seems, pursues science with great dedication. He is in love with it. He not only loves it, but this infects those around him too. Today, here we were introduced to directors of leading chemical institutes, very high audiences from the point of view of academic titles, as well, and many laureates of state prizes. The Lenin Prize. But what Viktor Ivanovich told us today, it is very interesting. It is obvious that some of them are revolutionary types of ideas. They should be backed up by the understanding of works of current developments. And at that, they would have shined in splendor. Mikhail Rozenkevich, leading researcher, professor of Mendeleev University of Chemical Technology of Russia, Doctor of Science in Engineering. For me, these are totally obscure things, but I can see them, so they exist, these things. I can do nothing. Amazing. I would like to add that, generally speaking, so many talents in one person, it is simply unreal. Because what is made by your hands, what is made by your head is amazing. That there are so many talents in one person. We are proud to be acquainted with you. Viktor Ovcharenko, member of the Russian Academy of Science, Director of International Tomography Center Institute, laureate of state and Lenin prizes. A genius development, surely. It is very rich in content. It's not simple. There's a lot of modern, sophisticated scientific moments there in this work. It is knowledge consumptive, as they say now. And in my opinion, this work may be implemented in a limitless number of the most fantastic ways. He is a very interesting person. Communication with him is, of course, a special thing, a special pleasure itself. He charges you with his energy, with the depth of his ideas. Sometimes it is rather difficult to communicate with him, because I, personally, could not always keep up with the pace of his thought. And my colleagues, too, as it seemed to me. He speaks of wonderful things, simply, yet many steps later, it is not always easy to restore the string of logic, because he gives a ready result, the conclusion, which has much behind it. And this development that was made before our eyes, a complex compound powder was produced. Of course, the procedure is unrepeatable every time. It is original, so we have a different phase conception every time. And a working device was constructed of it before our eyes and gave electricity before our eyes. I am simply amazed. Oleg Sinyashin, member of the Russian Academy of Science, meritorious scientist, director of the Federal Research Center, Kazan Science Center of RAS. This is obviously a non-standard person, a bright one. I consider him a real devotee because It seems amazing and interesting to me to set and solve a problem. Not being an expert, an immediate expert in the field. And if we are able to give a scientific base to everything he has shown us, I think it will be a breakthrough to technologies of the future, namely, to materials of the future. Sofia Sluchevskaya, Director of Bekhterev Scientific Research Neuropsychiatric Institute in St. Petersburg, SF. Even at the very first talk, a rather fleeting one, he made a great impression on me. Of course, an impression of an enormous, vast, big personality. The most amazing thing about him is his scope of knowledge in every field. Whatever you talk with him about, he always has his own opinion, his original vision. What a psychological portrait we can draw. A highly intellectual, very well educated in many spheres, sensitive person who knows what to talk about, how to make his companion interested, offering information in various fields, and thus provoking a great interest. Khachatur Bagdasarov, member of the Russian Academy of Science, leading researcher of the Shubnikov Institute of Crystallography of RAS. Viktor Ivanovich Petrik opens a new page in metallurgic engineering and in the area of creation of new materials in general. In all cases, absolutely all, we should provide help to Viktor Ivanovich because he goes ahead of the whole planet. He goes ahead of everyone. He runs wonderful experiments, and the state should support these works. This is the new page in materials science and engineering. I compare Viktor Ivanovich with Leonardo da Vinci. This is the person who can do absolutely unique things. And he showed this by his activity. Alexander Tchekmerev, corresponding fellow of Russian Academy of Science, one of the leading researchers of the Mendeleev University of Chemical Technology of Russia. I must say that it was unexpected for me to see what I have seen here, because there were many rumors, but when you see it for real, well, I don't know, for me, personally, I haven't had such excursions to research establishments in a long time. To learn so many absolutely new things for myself. And in general, there are so many ideas that really it appears like you deal with a genius inventor. For instance, this energy transfer. Here is the question. How can one call this establishment? Well, if one is to pick the title, then it is something like the Petrik's Laboratory of Fantastic Research. I don't know how to call it in another way, to adequately match the current workings here. Representative of Japanese scientist delegation. Our company has business in Japan related to nano diamonds and delivers them in huge amounts to different countries. Today, we've gotten to know the developments of Professor Petrik in the area of production of different nanomaterials. And these are very unique technologies. And we think that, in particular, nano-nickel can be used, for instance, for fuel elements. Also, the usage of these materials in various industrial areas is possible. In the first place, in the automotive industry. And all this development is unique, advanced, and finds wide application. Svetlana Kobzaryaova, expert in solids, the Institute of Shubnikov of Russian Academy of Science. It was very interesting for me to get to know the technologies developed by Viktor Ivanovich Petrik. I was really impressed with what I've seen. Firstly, those results, which I've seen, and that simplicity of technologies, which I've got to know. And as a professional in chemistry, I could assess them. Either they can exist or not. The area of synthesis of polycrystalline spinel, area of creation of the purest silicon crystal. These are two areas which impressed me very much. Breakthrough in the area of creation of polycrystalline spinel. This is really the breakthrough, because as far as we know in the USA, they struggle with this problem, but it was not yet solved. Viktor Ivanovich always was open for communication, for any explanations, clarifications, and everything that we wanted to know. He met our needs and always showed us everything, talked of everything. So even the person who does not have a special education could understand it. Boris Litunenko, assistant chairman of the KGB of the USSR, V.A. Khrushchev, the colonel of the Committee for State Security, vice chairman of the President Programs Foundation. Viktor Ivanovich at first appeared at our place with the issue of osmium, just in time when we were pursuing this topic, and there was a commercial boom around it. But actually, around osmium, as well as around red mercury, there were some defense aspects. That's why those works, which he performed on this topic, they unconditionally posed a question about his person. We thoroughly checked his past, who he was, what a person he was. All those things Viktor Ivanovich did, they were exposed to thorough analysis and control. But concerning practical demand, when we placed tasks for him, he solved them very quickly. It's important that he did things any other scientist could not. And this was the fact, the repeatable fact. This goes for osmium. This goes for his material of carbon mixture of high reactivity, anti-Stokes luminophores he made. Yes, this is a unique person, absolutely a unique person, an unorthodox one, with surprising thinking, who does not think within modern paradigms. He thinks in another way. He thinks outside the box, and no matter what we think of this, a result is a result. You should know Viktor Ivanovich very delicately inside, very sensitive. You should see his pictures. He paints himself. He made furniture, and museum specialists couldn't tell it from the original. His house is full of this furniture, of antiques, and these are modern replicas. He even made the study of Yeltsin at one time. Borodin, the head of the Department of Presidential Affairs, bought this furniture off him. This is a unique person. He perused stones in his work. In a week, he created a masterpiece on extra hard stones, both as an artist and a product engineer, just to show it to a specialist. He developed the system of processing these stones, which is unique in the world. At one time, they even brought responsible workers to Viktor Ivanovich. Even very responsible people were shocked. I know his laboratory. I know how he worked. I know his working schedule. This is a person without schedule. He got up in the night, woke up, worked, left. Yes, he can be classified as a genius. If one judges him by his results, the results are objective. They cannot be compromised. They exist, and the attempt to compromise Petrik is the attempt to not allow these results, but to get hold of them. Boris Karvarsarsky, merited scientist of the Russian Federation, chief psychotherapist of the Ministry of Health of the Russian Federation, MD, professor. I met him in the 60s when he was a student of the psychology department of the Leningrad University. My mentor, such a notable person, Bekhtyarev, and Vladimir Nikolaevich Myasishev, my mentor, he did much for Viktor Ivanovich to enter the Leningrad University. He wrote a special letter in relation to his, honestly speaking, unusual hypnotic abilities. And he was accepted as a student, rather recently, of the psychology's faculty. The thing is that Vladimir Nikolaevich knew. He received a message from the military college, which Viktor Ivanovich entered to study, that he had exceptional hypnotic abilities. And Vladimir Nikolaevich decided to check this. In relation to that, he suggested to Viktor Ivanovich to perform a hypnosis session in our round laboratory. Viktor Ivanovich said, I will perform a hypnosis session, but you should give me a patient who is immune to hypnosis, so that I could show that I am able, beyond an average hypnotist, who sometimes manages to treat a patient and sometimes not. And he performed a hypnosis on him, and 2 chairs were placed, and a cataleptic bridge was demonstrated. A man, of course, without hypnosis, without catalepsy, is not able to stay in a horizontal state when his head and feet are on different chairs. He managed to treat a very difficult patient who was immune to hypnosis, and this was done in the presence of Vladimir Nikolaevich and students of the Leningrad University. It was, of course, impressive, because to manage any patient, any person being hypnotized, to manage catalepsy, this bridge, this could be seen only in textbooks on hypnosis. So, Viktor Ivanovich demonstrated that he could do the classic hypnosis as a big specialist. Mind you, this was the beginning of his meeting with medicine, psychology. Further on, during his studies in the university, Viktor Ivanovich wrote, like all students, course projects. Then he wrote his diploma project. What I wanted to say, there are different ways of moving forward towards this creative inventiveness. Sometimes this happens in the middle of one's life. A person discovers some talent of an artist, of a composer, and so on. And this creative nature of Viktor Ivanovich had already appeared in that time. And the issue lies not only in hypnosis, of course, but in the fact that for his course projects and diploma, he made an appliance. An electrical appliance which allowed to make qualitative measures of the level of suggestibility of a person, suggestibility and autosuggestibility, which are still often defined using questionnaires. And this appliance was the base of his course projects and diploma. The diploma project was very interesting. Viktor Ivanovich, at my suggestion, wrote 2 theses on his diploma project, and they, I'd like to underline it. These were theses of nationwide scientific conference, not even Russian, but nationwide. And I refer to these theses in this book, Medical Psychology. These are separate recollections related to this book. And this book, it was the second one designed by Viktor Ivanovich. So wonderful, this design. It was made with some surprise for me, because even then I had known that he made violins, that he amazingly restored paintings. That I had already known. Later, I learned that he was also a book designer. And when he suggested, I was even surprised a bit. I should admit, this is the best book design in my trilogy. That's why this creative element was present during the creation of the appliance. Chief Urologist of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, MD, Alexander Shestyaev. Viktor Ivanovich is a professional in many spheres. Viktor Ivanovich is a person of a synthetic mind. At that, we all know that the greatest inventions were made on the jointing edge of sciences, on the jointing edge of technologies. So, Viktor Ivanovich, having the widest area of thought, the deepest knowledge in various spheres, and outside-the-box thinking, simply creates miracles on the jointing edge of adjacent sciences. We know and wonder still that in one person, also the greatest artist cohabit, creating unique pieces of art, making musical instruments. He is a painter, a poet, who writes haiku. He is a philosopher, the person making sculptures, growing stones, and so on and so forth. But all these activities are hobbies, and his real business is science. Mass media call him the Russian Leonardo. I think it is not exactly like this. You should get hired. This is a Russian Buddha. Despite the fact that his inventions work unconditionally, and this was repeatedly proved, they sometimes meet some opposition while being implemented. The reason, in my opinion, is in the fact that he is ahead of our time by tens of years. I think that Viktor Ivanovich is the legacy of our Russia. And not only Russia, this is a legacy of humankind, who should be treasured, and each of his words should be recorded, and his inventions should be thoroughly studied and put into practice. Georgy Fursey, Vice President of the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, academician, PhD in physics and mathematics, the author of a scientific discovery, the phenomenon of explosive electron emission. I've known him for 15 years already, even more than 15 years. Had got to know his laboratory. We often discussed various kinds of ideas. And here's what I wanted to say. Speaking about this person, Viktor Petrik, I'd like to say that this is a wonderful person. Some phenomenon, in a sense, absolutely out of the box, and in need of special study. Being very broadly educated a person, he was always interested both in scientific things and in technologies, and inventions, and art, and philosophy, psychology. Absolutely different things. And he has his own inner vision for each of these issues. And these special traits of mind had led him to many notable discoveries and inventions. Some of them are close to the sphere I am working at. So, I understand them. I can evaluate them in a professional sense. He invented how to splinter polarized carbons, get graphenes, and splinter layers of graphite, and insert a special carbon splintering media into the space between layers, in a most original way. Well, it's a more effective way in comparison to how it's made with the use of adhesive tape, as it was done in the experiments of Nobel Prize laureates Game and Novoselo. A fantastic thing. Such splintering leads to development of nanoparticles, which have particular off-balance properties, absolutely unique properties, fascinating sorption capacity, and so on. Such inventions should come to light. I always remember Edison, who, frankly speaking, wasn't all that educated in the scientific sphere. And Viktor Ivanovich is a rather highly educated person who made one discovery after the other, based on his intuition. Another person who had a remarkable power of observation, which I see Viktor Ivanovich has, Faraday, about whom his research advisor said that he was wonderful in seeing some nuances in the process from the first presentation. Usually, we look for 1,000 times and note something new at 1,001. But Faraday was like this. And this is also the quality which I would like to mirror in Viktor Ivanovich. It is hard to talk about this person. I have already said that this is a phenomenon. I think we should thoroughly study him and support him in any possible way.
Индустрия рака. Автор свыше 1000 публикаций в специальных журналах и других изданиях, посвященных онкологии.
Это первый визит вообще в Россию. И теперь он надеется, что не последний.
I think it really was for me, I would say, a life-changing experience to come here.
Он вообще-то это осознает сейчас, что это чуть ли не событие, которое меняет его жизнь после визита в Россию.
And I must say that I've not been disappointed.
И я абсолютно не разочарован этой поездкой.
In the course of my career of almost 40 years as a science writer, I've certainly been associated with a lot of very famous and brilliant people.
Вообще в моей карьере, более 40-летней, я, конечно, был связан и сейчас остаюсь связан и встречаюсь с очень важными, очень великими людьми в мире.
But I'm absolutely amazed at the profusion of ideas that are coming from Mr. Petrik.
Но он абсолютно поражен вот тем потоком идей и изобретений, открытий, которые он услышал за эти 3 года, 3 дня от господина Петрика.
And one is more astonishing than the next one.
И каждое новое, которое было показано, рассказано, по восприятию является интереснее и еще интереснее.
And what I find with Mr. Petrik is that it's almost any problem that you present to him, he has such a unique way of looking at things that he comes up with some startling new suggestion.
Очень потрясла его ситуация, что в принципе реакция Виктора Ивановича Петрика на любую тему, которая поднимается для обсуждения, абсолютно уникальная, неожиданная, которая, в общем, ведет к тому, что он даже может предлагать решения.
So I very much look forward to maybe being able to cooperate with Mr. Petrik.
И для меня сегодня абсолютно ясно, и я даже с удовольствием думаю, что хотелось бы мне скооперироваться с господином Петриком.
To explain to the world his unique way of thinking.
Во-первых, показать миру его абсолютно уникальный способ мышления, видение проблемы мышления.
And I think this would be the greatest contribution to cancer patients everywhere.
И в итоге абсолютно мне кажется, что это даст огромное удовлетворение раковым больным в первую очередь во всем мире.
Ученый-инженер.
Добрый вечер. Меня зовут Роберт Словак. Я инженер и ученый из Соединенных Штатов Америки. Приехал встретиться с Виктором Петриком в Санкт-Петербург. Я очень хотел узнать больше о его новом исследовательском направлении, графеновых технологиях. И, честно говоря, я не ожидал, что у этого направления будет такой большой потенциал. Одно из самых впечатляющих направлений его работы — это графеновые технологии, которые используются в фильтре, разработанном Виктором. За 2 минувших дня мне также довелось узнать много нового о прочих удивительных достижениях Виктора. Не только о его научных разработках, но и о реальных открытиях. О вещах, которые заставят ученых навсегда переосмыслить свою работу. В материаловедении Виктор занимается самыми сложными вопросами из тех, что я встречал за всю свою жизнь. Он работает на совершенно ином уровне. Он размышляет о самых разных и самых запутанных вещах, от энерготехнологии и древней геометрии до самой современной квантовой физики. Он поделился со мной таким числом идей, что мне захотелось прожить еще 100 лет, просто чтобы изучить все направления, о которых он мне рассказал.